Welcome! This is the Rustic Songbird podcast, and I'm your host, Lydia Walker. This show is for you if you're ready to learn more about the craft of songwriting and take your skills to the next level. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get started. My guest on the show today is Rachael Mann. She is an awesome person and just such a great friend, and really thankful to have her on the show to share her story and to answer some questions about what the writing process looks like, especially in more of a pop market. I'm really excited to talk about your style and how that's different for you and what that looks like. So Rachael, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and just to share my musical journey.
Yeah, and I know you've been doing this a long time. You've worked on multiple projects with lots of different producers and songwriters and artists. You've performed live so much and done recordings. And so you really do have a lot of experience under your belt, and I know you do it because you love it, and that comes through your music so well. So I'm excited to share some of your music with people that have maybe not heard it before, and also share some of your story just to encourage other writers who are wanting to go for their dreams and really take it to a professional level and do the best that they can with their music.
Right.
So share a little bit about your story of how you got started in songwriting and recording and making your own music.
Yeah. I began singing at the age of 7. But I never knew how to write music. I never did. I always tried. I always tried to write these little songs, but they never sounded good. They never turned out good. And I remember when I just graduated from high school, I was living in Alabama, and I really felt led. I grew up in church. I was a Christian since a young age, and I really felt led to reach out to a recording studio and just record my voice on some karaoke tracks. So I looked in the phone book. That was when everybody had phone books. I looked in the phone book and I just looked under recording studio. And the first one that popped up was one called Airwave. And I was like, okay, I'll call them. And it was like a legit studio in Birmingham. I was like, wow, this is like something I'd find in Nashville, and it's in Alabama. And it was a true recording studio, like the mics, the soundboard, like everything. And so I went in there and I started singing the karaoke tracks, and the guy doing the music was like, you need to meet the owner of this company. So I went in there, met another meeting, met the owner, and he was like, he heard my voice and he was like, we really need to work on a project together. And he said he wrote songs and stuff like that. Well, kind of around that time period, I all of a sudden just started getting songs right at that time period, right when it's just a perfect timing thing. Right when I was about to start working on this new project, when I was about 18, I all of a sudden started getting these songs. They just popped in my head. And during that time period, Destiny's Child was real popular. So the first song I wrote was called Strength to Believe. And it had a Destiny's Child sound. And I literally just everything just popped in my head within like maybe 10 minutes, the whole song.
Wow.
And so I went into the studio, and I do have a piano, so I can sometimes play things out on the piano just to see if it sounds good. But I went into the studio and I said, hey, I got this song, I wrote it. And I told him exactly, I could hear it in my head. Like I could hear what I wanted. And at that age, I'd sung a lot, but I'd never written anything. So to portray what was in my brain and give it to this producer was just a God thing. And he basically took everything I was hearing and put it on a track. And that was my beginning of learning how to portray what I felt and giving it to somebody that was skilled enough to understand how to take that and make it into a song. And ever since then, anytime something came into my brain or a song, or I co-wrote it with somebody else, and I gave it to a producer, it was really cool just to see how they could hear what I was telling them was in my heart. It's amazing how that works. It's really to me, it's almost like a miracle that they could literally take what you're hearing and what you feel and portray it on a track. It's almost like, and I've never really thought about it that way, but it really is almost like, how in the world can they hear what you're telling them?
There's got to be a God-given talent to be able to hear all those pieces and put it together. It takes a certain skill and a special person to pay attention to all those details, and also to be able to be versatile with lots of different artists. I love how
Yeah.
you said you just took action, looked in the phone book, looked up a recording studio, actually called them, went in for a meeting. Like
Yeah.
without that step, you may not be where you are today. So I think it
That's
really
right.
is those little moments and little decisions that
Yeah.
become the turning point. When we look back, we can say that's when it changed. And
Yeah.
that's when I got serious, or that's what propelled the next step to do a full project and record with somebody.
That's
So
right.
now what does your writing process look like when you're starting a song idea? Do you like to listen to something in the background before you get started? Do you like to have some music first and then add lyrics? What does that look like for you?
It's all different, like sometimes I'll just be somewhere and I'll just hear this song melody. I'll hear it. And I'm like, oh my, I better record this now or I'm going to forget this. Cause a lot of times you'll forget it. I mean, seriously, unless it's like something like, if you have tons of different ideas going through your brain at one time, you need to record it on your phone, do whatever you can do to record it quickly. Because what will happen, you start getting busy and they're like, what was that song I was just thinking about? Darn it, I can't
Right.
remember it. So you go and you need to record it real quick. But then sometimes I'm listening to something on the radio that I hear, or like a worship song or whatever, and I'm like, I get inspired by that, and then I might be listening to that, not copying that because you can't
Right.
copy what they're doing, but you can be inspired by what you're hearing, and it could jolt something in your, something you're feeling like to write down. And then sometimes I might just be. There's many times I've just been on the piano and I'll just start playing around with something and then this melody will come into my head. I mean, it's all different. And then a lot of times you may be with a co-writer. And a lot of times I like being with co-writers because they may be hearing something and then you're hearing something and you put it together. And those are fun too. I love co-writing sessions.
Oh yeah,
It,
it turns out so different when you have
I know.
multiple perspectives in the room.
It does. It does. So, and a lot of times, and one of the things I also do is people that are better than me that have been doing it for a really long time don't feel like you're, the best of the best. You need to be open to realize you may not be the best, and getting with someone else that's better than you will really help you be better as an artist yourself. Like I always want to
Definitely.
learn. It's kind of like reading the Bible. You just sometimes you need a pastor that's really really good to explain these things to you so you're like, oh, I get it now, so
Yeah.
it's just really important to just be versatile, just be open to learning, and don't always think you're the best. So
But
that's one
surround
thing.
yourself with people that are further along and further ahead than you are,
Yes.
because then you can learn from them.
Yes.
Well, I love your style and your sound, and it is so unique. And you have
Thank
such a
you.
hopefulness and like a joy in your
Oh,
songs that really
thank
comes across. How did you go about like discovering your own voice and your own unique sound? Because you
yeah.
mentioned like not copying other people, making it your own. So,
Yeah.
how would you encourage somebody who's maybe trying to find their own sound?
Well, so growing up, before I learned to write, I was singing to karaoke tracks like Michael W. Smith. I would be singing to stuff at churches. And still, even today, I'll sing cover songs, because people know them. Um, and I think what happens is a lot of times they listen to the karaoke track or the person singing on the track giving you the example, and they think they have to sing it just like that person, but you don't.
Right.
You can do it your own way. And a lot of times when I sing songs and I use somebody else's, I make it my own. And that's one of the things that, I've had people tell me before. It's like, you made this song your own. It wasn't like it was like it was your own song. And you don't have to sound just like that person on that track. You don't have to sound just like that artist. Be yourself. Sing from your heart. Sing from your spirit. Be you. Be who you are. And I think, it's real easy as a female, especially with, so many wonderful artists out there. A lot of times, like, we feel like we have to copy or we're not good enough or whatever. And no, just be who God created you to be. Be yourself. And I think that, as a young girl, when I grew up singing to these tracks, I learned who I was. I listened to my own runs, my own, style of singing, my own, don't listen to somebody else's, little runs they do. Do your own. And I think at the long run, that will make you more successful. It will make you happier because you're actually singing from your heart. You're not worried that you have to sound just like that other person.
Right.
And
So
so,
you did a lot of experimenting then to find what
yes,
works best for you and your own voice.
yes, I did. I grew up when I was 10 years old. Literally, I had a karaoke machine in my house, and all day, I mean, all my friends would be outside playing, and yeah, I would from time to time, but I literally spent hours upon hours making tracks, and in my own, with cassette tapes. I mean, literally, like, just making these tracks and making these tracks, and like, and doing harmonies and all this kind of stuff, because I loved it so much. It was like a joy. It wasn't like a hindrance. It was like, I love this. This is what I want to do. And just to see that, see what God has done, it's amazing. The dreams that you have as a kid, a lot of times, I mean, many times, if you continue at it, God will bring those to pass.
Yeah, it's so neat to look back and just think, oh, I loved singing when I was younger. It makes sense
Yeah,
that that's what you're doing now, and making
yeah,
music
yeah.
on a bigger level and sharing it with more people. So I want to know, what's something you wish you knew about the music industry
Huh,
that you had to learn through hard knocks? Because maybe we can spare someone from having to go through some of the same things to learn.
that's good.
So what's something you wish you knew?
I think for me, and I'm not going to say anything bad, but just for me personally, I think as a kid, when I listened to certain artists, I always thought they were perfect, especially if they were Christian artists. I was like, they don't have any problems. They're just they don't they're singing and touring and they don't have any issues. And the more I'm in this industry, the more I realize their problems are either as they have a lot of issues, because when you're in the limelight and then you're a human being and you have your own just personal struggles that you have to go through, but then you're in the limelight, and that's like, it's sometimes that could be magnified. And so I think it's important that we don't put people on pedestals. I think it's important that we realize that they're just a person, and what God did for them, he can also do for you. He can elevate you to their status also. But if I think of myself in their position, or some of the artists that I grew up listening to, where they're touring all the time, and I'm doing some stuff, but I'm not touring all the time. I have to think of myself as a human being being put in that position. I'd have to daily, daily, daily ask God for help and rely on him, because you're away from your home, you're away from your family, so I think for me, it's just realizing that musicians are people that we grow up listening to are people, and they need to ask God for help just as much as we all do. So I think that's one of the things that I would just encourage people, is just don't put people on pedestals.
Yeah, that's so good, because we can look at the shiny packaged product and think, well, that must have been easy for them, or think that they don't have the same problems as us. But that's true. Like, every person has their own issues, and we all need God to guide us to
Yeah,
do anything good. It
yeah,
has to be him, and I believe that when God's in it, it just works.
yeah.
And so he has called different people to different things, but I also believe that there's room for every person and their
That's right.
talent and their songs. There's room for every style, and
Hmm.
that it's not going to be oversaturated, because if you work hard at it and put your heart into it, it's going to be good, and it's going to
Yeah,
help people and encourage people. It doesn't matter if it ends up on the radio, or if you
that's
do end
right.
up going on tours, or if it helps one person. I believe
That's
there
right.
is so much room
There
for every
is.
person.
There is. And that's one of the things, growing up, my mindset was like, oh, I got to get on the radio. I got to do this. I got to do that. Blah, 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 blah. And that defines your success, but that's not true. If it, like you said, if there's one person out of a million, God celebrates when one comes to him, and it celebrates just when one, turns around, turns their life around. And it is for that one. There could be a song that you've written, and someone is in the midst of, you know doing something, or wanting to commit suicide. I don't know. I mean, it's just, they could hear your one song, and that song's about, hope and joy, and like you're worth something, and God has a plan for you. and they hear that one song and it turns their life around. I mean, there's so much room. And you're right. I just, don't get discouraged if you feel like your song's not going to make it on the radio or whatever. It's not about that. It's about being faithful to what God's created you to do. And if he wants the door to open for that, then awesome. But if not, and like you said, if one person hears it, that's all that matters, and just doing it because you love it, and being faithful to what you're made to do. And my mindset sure has changed from when I was younger to now, because that's what my goal was, like radio. But you know what? There may be a better plan than radio.
Right.
There could be a better door than radio. And, that's just, you should never give up just because you don't think you have a chance,
Right. There's always room. Thank you so much for sharing some encouragement today for our listeners, and also some of your story. I just love your music and love you as a person. You're just such a beautiful person inside and out. And I appreciate you sharing with us today. I do want to let everyone know how they can connect with you online. So Rachael's website is rachaelmann.org, and Rachael is spelled AEL, and Mann is spelled with 2 N's. So rachaelmann.org. We'll link it in the show notes as well. And I would encourage you to send a message to Rachael and thank her for being on the show. Go check out her music and see what she's up to. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much. It was so awesome being a part of it, and it was great.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and share it with a fellow writer. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next episode.